So welcome to another webinar from Nathan Trust. Today we're talking about how to build a remote first culture for a scaling business. We're joined by Aidan O'Shea, who is the CEO of Otonomee. Otonomee is a customer management partner who focus on delivering growth and technology solutions to globally to fast scaling business. And Otonomee is a 100% remote first business. Aidan, I think you've muted yourself there, so you might want to unmute yourself. Yeah, that's it. Now, unfortunately, the small technical hitch we had was that Aidan's camera, our Zoom won't allow Aidan to turn his camera on, but you'll have to hear what he says rather than see what he says. So Aidan, welcome. Thanks for coming along.
No problem. Thanks for having me. You obviously didn't pay your bill on time, did you?
Maybe it's partially. I was going to go on to Zoom customer support there, but I'm not sure they're that responsive. So maybe that's something we can come to as well. Just as a bit of housekeeping too, we record all these and put them on our social channels on YouTube. So if you miss anything, it'll be there to share. There's a Q&A webinar as well. So if you've got questions, please press on the Q&A button and ask them. And as they come in, we'll do our best to answer them. We've got a few questions beforehand from people, which we always get that we'll come to. But I guess, Aidan, if you want to tee it off, maybe just give a quick background onto what Otonomee are and what's your approach and all that sort of good stuff.
Yep. So happy to do so. It's weird doing a webinar. It's like a radio interview, Phil. Yeah. So Otonomee is we're in the business process outsourcing industry. So we provide outsourced customer support, technical support, and sales solutions to our customers on an outsourced basis. And those customers are generally, scaling businesses who have their own customers in either Ireland, the UK, Europe, and the US.
Okay, and is it any all around the world or any particular locations?
Okay, yeah. So customers, we support our customers, and they could be in any market around the world. Otonomee is we're obviously Irish headquartered, but our people are largely based all around Ireland and in Portugal. So we're fully remote, and we have the ability to hire from anywhere.
Okay, very good. There's a couple of questions coming in. Usually we just shoot the questions at you, and they probably lead to other things. So one which is kind of sounds a bit obvious, but it's quite a good question is someone's looking to hold a virtual summer party for their staff. Any tips? Have you done that? Have you done virtual Christmas parties? Or
well, we, like the rest of the world, I think last Christmas when nobody was allowed out and about, we did do a virtual Christmas party. It was done by Zoom, and we had paid our bill at that time, so we could see everybody else. We brought in a couple of entertainers. We had a magician, and we did what else did we do? Kind of a musical bingo, which was great crack. I know it sounds a bit strange doing it virtually and not doing it in person, but it worked, and we had great fun.
Okay, and are you planning on doing, now that COVID's over, are you still going to go with the virtual ones, or are you going to do in-person ones a bit?
Yeah, good question. I think we'll do both. I mean, okay, we're fully remote, but like getting together and meeting in person is a really important part of our business anyway, and of I think any remote business. The day-to-day, the 9 to 5, the work that we do, people will do on a work from home basis. But we do want to get together. We do get together. Our leadership team is getting together face to face next week, and it is important, to do intermittently, whether you're doing a planning session, a strategy session, or if it's just a summer event, a barbecue, a Christmas event. So absolutely, we will be getting together face to face. Yeah.
So you think it's if you can all meet, and like if there are businesses out there that have been remote all the time, yeah, do they meet up regularly on quarterly or yearly basis? Do they try their best to get everybody under the one roof at any one point in time, do you think?
I would say generally yes. Look, I mean, there's no hard and fast rules as to how often, but there are some, as you said, some great companies that have always been out there and that have always been remote, and I think they don't do it that often. I mean, it's a big thing to bring everybody together if you have people working in lots of different locations. You know, maybe like a lot of the bigger, let's say, better known companies, I think would do once annual with the entire company, and then, you know, at team levels, you could probably do it a bit more often, depending on the locations, I guess.
Okay, there's another question in here. So, how do you deal with putting someone on a performance review or disciplining someone? This is quite a good, tough questions as well.
Mother of God.
But I suppose these are the relevant things for remote first businesses, aren't they?
Yeah, but like, I mean, like, I don't think that's a process that is massively different whether you're remote or you work in a building. You know, the way we work, and the clue is in the name, autonomy. It's about, you know, giving people the tools, the training that they need to do the work, setting them up to be successful, and trusting them to get on with the job, you know. Like, okay, people, we focus more on outcomes that we try to get people to deliver on, rather than, you know, whether it's hours or, you know, attendance or whatever. So, you know, again, if people are delivering on the outcomes, you'd hope that you don't need, for, you know, the performance management. But like, it is a standard process with whether it's HR or people management. I don't know that it has to be that different remotely, you know, if you're operating remotely.
Okay, and like, I guess there's a question about onboarding people as well, and is that relative? Is it different for different generations? Like, you know, do you have people that are Gen Z, millennials across the board, or with one age group, is it easier than others, or harder than others, or are you finding anything?
Yeah, look, and I suppose onboarding is a good example compared to, let's say, performance management. Like, you know, you need to think of the employee life cycle if you want to move to remote or shift to remote. So, you know, the vast majority of your processes do need to be reconsidered and redesigned. So, you know, how think of the employee life cycle. How does a person or an employee hear about your business the first time? It's through a recruiter or a job advert. So that needs to be redesigned and rethought for remote. How you recruit, the questions that you ask when you're interviewing, that needs to be rethought for remote. When you're you know, when you're onboarding, when you're training, those things need to be done differently. You can't just take you know, here's how we did it in the building, and now we're just going to put it onto a laptop and everybody's going to log in over a Zoom and we deliver it. So, you know, the vast majority of your processes do need to be rethought, redesigned. You need to be, that word that is used a lot around remote, be very intentional around how are we going to manage this for a remote environment, because it is different.
And is it so you have to be intentional? It's like a lot of businesses that are scaling are kind of, you know, jumping off the cliff and fixing things as they go down. With using remote management, you have to have it figured out before you engage with it.
Well, I think absolutely that would help, you know. It's kind of, it's difficult because business is going on. It's not like you can stop the business and say, right, we're going to redesign everything now for a period of time and pause, you know, our customers and the work that we do for them. So you have to redesign as you go, but you definitely need to look, it's leadership first, right? It has to be buy-in from the top. You know, it has to be a priority that we are going to make this way of working work for us. And there, you know, it cascades down. And you know, again, you need to take a review of all of your business, all of your, you know, how you engage with your employees, how you communicate, how you lead, how you manage. All of these things are different in a remote environment.
Okay, and I suppose that brings on the question then, you have a remote environment and you have this hybrid environment, which seems to be going on at the moment. Like, we work a hybrid environment, and it seems to be going fine, but you know, we haven't really planned out how an hybrid environment works. We're just continuing to doing what we're doing rather than being that prescriptive about it. Like, what are you seeing with people with the hybrid environments?
I think it's going to be really challenging, and I'm glad we don't have to worry about it, because we're one way or the other. We have committed and we're fully in on being remote. Hybrid is a mix of the two, you know, and it's really only started because during COVID, the government told us that whether you're an employee or an employer, that you have to work from home, and it's not so long ago that ended, and now employers need to make a choice, and that choice that they make won't always be the same as their employees. And it is going to be difficult. You know, how, like, again, it depends on the nature of the business, the size of the business, how many people you have, the locations that they work in. So again, I don't think there's one hard and fast rule, but I think it's going to be really hard. And I think as well, we're at the start of a new phase of, well, how work is going to be done, the world of work. Even, you know, the topic here, like remote culture. And I think in the not too distant future, there won't be remote work. There's just going to be work, you know, and people, it won't necessarily be a question, do you work from home or not? And actually, you know, I'm a believer that in time, more people will be working remotely than will be working in offices.
Yeah, I would say, I would tend to agree with you. That's certainly the way it's looking. You might be able to turn your video on there. Can you just try that there? Amazing. So for the record, anybody that says men can't do two things at the one time, I've managed to figure that out as well as listen to you. So
I could tell you were listening to me, actually.
I know. So there is more questions coming in. Any guidance on the kind of training you brought your leadership through?
Yeah. And again, it is a really important thing, right? Because, you know, I speak for myself and most of our team. You know, we spent 20 years working in offices until COVID, and your experience during COVID, it was an emergency, it was a pandemic, it was forced. It wasn't a plan, it wasn't something we stepped back and said, okay, let's go into this now carefully. So you know, specifically around training, like there are some great organizations out there that can help you. We do some work with an organization called Grow Remote, who I would advise anyone to look up and engage with and get involved with. So they're a not-for-profit organization who promote remote working, social enterprise, I guess you'd call them. But one of the things they do is they run training courses, and maybe even calling it a training course is a little unfair. It was a leadership course. It was, you know, how do you manage, how do you lead remote teams? You know, so that was an exercise that we went through. It was there was, let's say, 8 modules, and, you know, there was in-person, or sorry, you know, in video sessions, and there was homework, and there was readings, and there was group sessions. So, you know, over a period of a number of months, it helped us develop our thinking, develop your model. And there's still so many things that we need to do that we know we haven't got to yet, or we're not doing well enough. But that was one example of some really, really good training out there, and there are good resources. There are, as you said earlier, there are companies who've been doing this for a long time, you know.
And do they talk about how they're successful doing it? Like a lot of these tech, I'm guessing they're mostly tech companies, are they?
Yeah, GitLab is the obvious example for anyone who's, again, interested in learning how this is done. They're an incredible company. They write everything about what they do and how they do it. It's on a website. So, you know, how they manage remotely, just how they manage, how they work, you know, their culture, their values, how they communicate, their annual objectives, their revenue targets, like everything is on this. It is incredible, and it's an incredible source of information. So I think in the past there was companies that did this, were quite evangelistic about it. So they were quite keen to spread the word, and quite very open to sharing their experience. So there are others out there as well, but I think GitLab is definitely one that I would certainly look at a lot and try to learn from.
And that Grow Remote guys at growremote.ie, isn't it? Just Google Grow Remote and
yeah,
you'll get them.
You'll get there with that, yeah.
And just on the leadership thing too, is like the meeting after the meeting or the meeting before the meeting. Like if you're having meetings, are you 100% remote, or would you have 2 or 3 people together with 4 or 5 people in various locations?
No, we're 100% remote. Remote first. Okay, sorry, we're not, like I said earlier, we get together. There will be face to face. It will be planned, but just that exact scenario that you spoke is one of the ones that we're trying to avoid, because it is problematic. It's, you know, people, when they get together in meeting rooms, they will chat, and they will, you know, converse, and they'll talk over the camera, and it's like, you know, it's 2 different ways of doing things, and that's, again, we've made the decision that we don't want to do that. So it's, you know, in our meetings, everybody is in their own home office.
Okay, and it's like it's one of your 10 commandments: don't have the meeting after the meeting.
What do you mean by that? Like,
As in, you know, like if you have 3 people in a meeting, you have 3 in virtual areas, that the 3 who are together have a conversation once the meeting ends. You know, that
yeah.
dynamic is there. Just you prescriptively try to stop that dynamic. I think that's happening in hybrid, and it's
yeah.
I think it's a disaster.
Look, I think we don't have an office, so like there isn't going to be
Yeah.
a case where there'll be 3 or 4 people together after a meeting. I think you're right. It is a challenge. You know, and like we try not to be too prescriptive around telling people what to do or not to do, but yeah, like these are the scenarios that, again, that companies are only going to encounter, you know, in the last month or two and going forward, you know, and how you manage that is going to be difficult.
Okay, a couple of more questions here. Any guess to the cost advantages you have versus the competitors due to not having any real estate? Have you figured out how much the cost of running the big hub, the big the support center is?
Yeah. Well, I have, and I do, and I'm unfortunately I'm not going to say it here, but like a significant portion of overhead in, okay, let's say the business that we're in, the outsourcing business, traditionally it was all about, you know, large numbers of people in big buildings in city centers, because you needed to be where people lived and you needed to bring people into the city. So facilities were very expensive because of the location. You had facilities teams to manage the building, to, you know, make sure that the swings and slides worked and all that. And so I do know, right? And it was a significant portion of overhead, which, like anything else, like it takes away from, you know, really important things like, you know, your people and, you know, R&D and technology and developing the business generally. No, so it's like, it's not true to say that, okay, we don't have that cost anymore, therefore we've saved that X percentage, because you need to invest in other things. So back to what I've said earlier, you know, how do we communicate? How do we invest in the employee experience in different ways? You know, we set people up to work from home, we give them the equipment, we're paying for the equipment, that's not their own lookout, you know. So you may not have rented facilities, but, you know, it's substituted with other things. But there is no doubt there is a cost advantage.
There was a question too on the equipment. So if someone loses a piece of equipment, breaks a printer, or has a computer IT problem, how is that supported? Quite a practical question, actually.
Good question. Yeah, we don't print because we're fully digital. But, you know, obviously hardware is a really important part of for every role, no matter what business you're in. One of the things we've tried to do, and we're still, I suppose, in the process of it, is you know, we're trying to build a business that can grow and can scale internationally, because we want to hire. One of the benefits of remote is hiring from anywhere. We want to hire all over Europe. Like where we're in Europe, we expect to expand further, because, you know, we'll be looking for different language skills and technical skills, different time zones. So, you know, I think the way most companies did it during COVID or just after is, you know, you had a stock of hardware, or you still have a stock of hardware, and your IT guys are managing requests in and shipping out, and they're managing couriers, and which is not a nice task, right? So that's not really a scalable solution for us. So we have outsourced that. So we define a spec of hardware and software. We use a third-party provider. First Base is their name, and they literally, we make our employees can make requests to them, whether it's, you know, if it's a new employee, the request will come from HR or IT. If something breaks that needs to be fixed or reshipped, the employee can directly make the request to them. So we're moving away from doing it ourselves to a fully outsourced solution. As you can understand, we're fans of outsourcing. That's the way forward.
Yeah, that's clear anyway. The just as you talk about not printing, someone's asked, can you talk about the importance of documentation? I hate documentation, so I don't think it's important at all, but anyway.
Yeah, but like it depends what you mean. It is really important in remote, right? Because like communication is a really important thing, and you can't, like in a building, and I think whether this is right or wrong, a lot of businesses and groups of people would have relied on informal communication. I'd walk into your office, I'll meet you in the corridor. That's how I'll find out a lot about what's going on. In a remote world, that doesn't work, right? So you don't always have the facility to capture information. So it really is important to document how things are done, document decisions that were made, meetings that were held. And you might say this is obvious stuff anyway, but a lot of businesses don't do it, you know, or never did it. So and then to make that information available centrally. And I think, you know, back to, I mentioned GitLab earlier, that's one of the reasons they write everything down and they make it available. They're doing it internally, but they're doing it externally as well. So it is really important if you want to scale, and, you know, you have a lot of new people coming in who need to learn how do we do things, about processes, you know, that they won't necessarily always learn from another person or their manager. There needs to be a source of information. So documentation is really important in a remote world. So
you've standard operating procedures, SOPs for nearly everything you're doing.
Well, we haven't got there yet, but you know, that's where we need to get to. Yes. Like, okay. It's not something that'll happen overnight. It's probably a never-ending task, because processes change and practices change.
They do. There's another one here. Given you come from a long career in an office environment, someone's insinuating you're older than you are, but anyway. When and how did the penny drop for you that this could be done without an office?
Yeah, good question.
Were you stewing in the office for years thinking this is a waste of time and effort? You can do this better.
We were stewing for a while. So like, again, like the industry that we're in was really challenged. Like if you go back to like 2019, 2020, similarly to now, the war for talent was really hard to get people, really hard to keep people. And again, because we were in cities, like big cities, there was lots of competition from big tech who, you know, like 2 weeks ago, TikTok say they're hiring 1,000 people in Dublin. We had an office in Dublin in my previous role. That meant that we would have lost X number of people, because, you know, you won't compete with TikTok and what they're offering. So yes, there was a lot of stewing around this model is not working. And we actually did try, in my previous role, we spoke to some of our customers about work from home as a potential solution to, again, tap into different talent pools and not have that competition and reduce that attrition. But, you know, the view was it's not safe, it's not secure, you can't trust them, they won't be productive. And then in the middle of March 2020, you know, or maybe the end of March, after everyone was working at home for a week or two, people started realizing actually this can be done, it can work. People, you can trust people, they can be productive. And it was at that point really that it started dawning on me that, whoa, this industry can be done in this way. So that's really it was. And, you know, Otonomee was set up during a lockdown, during a COVID lockdown, and that was when the penny dropped. So you're still competing with the big players though, and they haven't gone remote, have they? They would be hybrid.
Okay.
But they are at that point that I spoke about earlier, where they have these huge facilities that they've invested an awful lot in, and they are now at a point, like all businesses, where they have to decide what version of hybrid are we doing, and, you know, when are we going to ask people to come back, and how often are we going to ask them to come back? And it's a difficult one. So they're not remote first or remote only. They're hybrid, but I would imagine they're not really clear on what version of hybrid they are.
Would you see correlations? So we're coming across more and more and seeing remote first technology businesses that are scaling. Does it make total sense for them? I think you'll obviously say yes, but can you define advantages that they go to a remote first outsource solution as opposed to go for the bricks and mortar type solution?
I think the nature of technology businesses, the nature of the work that is done, like if it's development, like that work like can be done, and an individual can do it in their own home on their own. Why would a developer need to be in an office with a whole load of other people? And that's not only true for development or software development roles. I know there's a lot of surveys out there on this type of thing. I know actually I was at the Dublin Tech Summit last week, and one of the speakers said that I think 75% of all developers want to work from home at least 3 times a week. And if they don't have that facility, they won't even consider working for a company.
Wow.
Yeah. And that is specifically developers, but I mean, you asked about technology company, but you know, a lot of the work that we do is customer support, is technical support, is sales. It can also be done. Obviously, we wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't. It can also be done on a work from home basis. So you asked about the advantages, the hiring from a wider talent pool, you know, giving people choice, giving them the autonomy to choose where and how they work. It leads to a better employee experience, and that leads to better retention, happier employees, you know, lead to more productive employees. It leads, you know, it opens you up to a more diverse workforce. Again, you're not just hiring from where you are or where your headquarters are. There are many advantages.
And you're seeing that scaling businesses see that as well, and they're happy to engage with businesses like yourself. They're not conservative when it comes into looking for outsourced partners.
I think, you know, outsourcing is always the first time you do it. It's always a difficult decision, because you're giving something that you do away, and you're giving the minding of your customers to somebody else. So that's a challenge for businesses to overcome the first time they do it. But when they do it, they will very rarely go back, because there are advantages to it. There's you know, we are the industry are specialists in what we do. We get very good at it. We have the technology to do it. We know how to manage the people and develop the people, which is an important part of it. So if you do it internally and you want to scale it, it requires a big commitment and a big investment as well, you know.
Yeah. And do you find if you're working with companies that you teach them a bit about how to get the remote working right in other parts of their business that mightn't be related to the work you do for them?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. We are starting to see that, because again, we've been at this now maybe a year and a half or 2 years, which, like, you know, isn't really a long time, but and because we're again just focused on this is the way we're doing it, you know, you would imagine, but we're a bit better than some of our customers at it. What I'm seeing is that a lot of bigger companies are starting to struggle, because again, and it is largely around talent. They're finding it hard to keep people, finding it hard to attract people, because they're starting to go back, even if they're going back hybrid. But if it's hybrid, you're still within 20-30K of an office, you know, and the world has changed and people have moved on a bit, you know. So we're starting to see, I know you mentioned that we work with a lot of earlier stage scaling companies, but we're definitely seeing bigger companies have this problem. And it's very hard for a bigger company to all of a sudden shift towards, okay, now we need to think about how we manage remotely as well as in an office. It's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, I just think that the hybrid thing, there's a bit to kind of come out of the weeds there, isn't it? Because you think hybrids, for me, it's fine because I can open the blinds here and see my office, so I can go in and out anytime I want. But if there's someone living 30 kilometers away and we decide, right, we're going to be in the office 2 days a week, there's an obvious advantage over one person over another. And then, well, you're putting someone else up, but you can create resentment as well. And
that's the like, employers and leaders of companies have to be very careful that they're not using their own bias effectively towards, oh, I think working in the office is much better, therefore we're all going to do it. You know, that's a dangerous thing that can happen.
Yeah. Okay, so we're coming up to 33 minutes. I've got all the questions in. I think no more have come in. So I'd say to wrap it up, any couple of do's and don'ts, one thing you learned kind of 2 years down the remote first road that you knew you wished you knew at the start of the journey?
Very good question.
Make sure you do webinars with people that know how to get cameras turned on. Was that one?
Yeah, that'll be right up there for sure. I think, like, you know, everyone's always looking for a silver bullet and what's the one thing, and but like, and it kind of goes back to my answer earlier. Like you need to look at the business end to end, and like to me, it really, one of the big things is about trust, and that's uncomfortable for people because, you know, we used to all see each other, we used to all be in the same room or the same building, and now we're not. You know, so how am I going to overcome that? So you really need to trust that people can do the work on a remote basis, and then, you know, how do you facilitate that and enable that? But you need to look at all the way along, again, all the way along the employee life cycle. It's not just one thing. There are everything that you do needs to be reassessed with a view to remote. So
I guess trust people and then support them. That's a takeaway.
Yeah, like the flip side of trust is accountability as well. You know, that's really, and you get that from people when you trust them, as in the accountability that, look, you know, you're trusted to work from home because we hired you because you can do a role and you're going to be good at it. And the accountability is that, you know, if we've all been clear on what are the outcomes, what do we expect from you, well then, you know, that's what people will deliver, and that's the accountability piece. So you, in return, are getting the performance and the productivity and the outcomes that they want.
Okay, well, I think on that we'll leave it. Listen, thanks to everybody for turning up. Good turn up. Aidan, thanks very much for your time. And
no problem. Thank you.
We'll record this and we'll share it with everybody on YouTube and social. And I think that's it. Great. Thanks again.
All right,
guys.
Thanks. See you.